Over the last couple of years, a lot more people have engaged in self-destructive behavior. Moms and dads, we're talking about a sensitive topic today, and we would encourage you to listen to this first. If you or someone you know is thinking about self-destructive behavior, please dial 988 for immediate help. And let's walk together into the darkness here for a moment as we stray further every day. I'm Charlie, and glad to have you here with us on Further Every Day, joined by some wonderful colleagues here, and we're going to be talking about a really difficult topic, and we've got Miss Nikki in the chair of theology.
Good morning.
Good morning. It is so good to have you in that chair. You do it so well, dealing what we believe in when it comes to a biblical stand. And then next to her, we have Miss Melissa with us today.
How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. It is so good to see you today. We miss having you on here.
I need to do this a little bit more often.
You absolutely need to. Dealing with why, bringing the thought into this. I'll be dealing in the chair of culture, and this is a quite the cultural topic today. Mr. Steve,
Yes,
in the
sir.
chair of politics.
Yes, sir.
Are you ready to engage in the politically correct?
Of course. I'm always ready. I want one of them
correct.
beautiful introductions like Nikki had, man.
He's really
I
glad
will-
you're
well,
here.
beautiful-
You know?
She's my wife. You're not.
Oh, okay.
Beautiful
That
introductions
makes
for
a
beautiful
big
people,
difference.
Steve.
I understand.
We're happy to have you here in that chair of politics.
Now she's sucking up.
My gosh.
And then to Steve's left, Mr. John Arthur,
Howdy, sitting in the chair of economics.
economics. And on this topic,
The value of life.
yep,
Is it-
The value of your time in life. People don't think about that when they give it away.
absolutely.
When they take the ultimate act of self-destruction, they're punching their time cards. And
Yeah.
I'm getting ahead of myself here, but they're playing God,
Yeah.
and it's
Yep.
it's easy to do in a moment of despair.
We're going to talk about some of those things as we get into this topic. I want to start out, though, with just some general information, some general stats. And the links where I got this information are in the notes below. So make sure you take a look at those. We're not going to go into great detail on these. I do want to make one comment on this particular slide here. And this number really kind of stood out to me. You'll notice the number of ER visits, and it's 660,000. Folks, that's just for the people that actually showed up at the emergency room. All right. There are many others that are unreported. So the attempts to me are quite unreal. This slide here, and by the way, for those of you that do go and look at these stats, I want you to understand something. When I was looking at doing the research on this, the statistics were kind of 2022, 2023, they're mixed, they're garbled. All right. So you'll see the number here on this slide is more than 48,000 people. And if you look at numbers for 2023, it's 47, 46. You get what I'm saying here. Okay. So this slide, though, is the one that really kind of grabbed my attention. And guys, I'd like to get some initial thoughts on this. This is self-destructive behavior by age. And the thing that stood out to me on this was the number of senior citizens, more than 50%. And we talk about the physician-assisted stuff. That certainly, I don't think those stats are included in that.
So just for clarification, the first slide we put up in the order of the deck was actually the by ethnicity. So this one is by age, just for the.
Oh, sorry. Oh, my apologies. You
No.
did actually grab that. My apologies.
I did. I grabbed all four from your deck.
Okay, wonderful. So, and the one by ethnicity also had some interesting things on it. But the one by age was
Seniors.
Yeah.
Over 65
Yeah.
is a significant number. In fact, it's the majority.
What is the one thing that we hear our politicians constantly talk about when it comes to difficult issues like this? And to me, it's always the talk about, well, we got to look out for the kids. We got to look out for the seniors. Guys, if you look at the slide, guess who your top two groups are? The seniors. And guess who's next? Your kids. So it just really, I think it stands out that our issue here is really not being dealt with very well. And by the way, we're going to take a tone of looking at this from a church perspective,
Absolutely.
which is really, I think, where we're failing. And I want to just call out real quick. I want to say a thanks. I don't know if he'll look at this podcast. I don't know if he does that kind of thing. Pastor Alan Nolan, Nolan Allen. Sorry. I believe it's Nolan Allen.
Well, you better hope he doesn't watch this
I'm going to get it
podcast.
backwards. He's from Oklahoma, and he put together two really good messages. They were not podcasts. These were church preaching sermons, and I thought he dealt very beautifully with the topic. It's a difficult topic, and I thought he did it really well. So, guys, initial thoughts. Miss Nikki, let me start with you on this issue of self-destructive behavior.
Well, my grief in this situation is the more I hear Christians making this decision to end their lives. It's what they're doing, and I'm confused because I've been saved since I was 9 years old, which is going on 50 years, and the God that I serve. Yes, I've had hopelessness. I've had, moments of feeling totally worthless and life wasn't worth going on. But the Lord in his grace has always been good to reach his hand down and strengthen me, send the right people along. And I think if God showed me that kind of graciousness, there's got to be graciousness out there for others too. And I think this is something very dear to God's heart, is that Jesus said, I came to give you life and to give you more abundantly. And Jesus also said, let my joy be in you. It doesn't mean the joy of the world. It's his joy. It's a supernatural thing. And so I'm concerned, where are these people missing it? What happened? What has got in their mind or in their life that they have become so hopeless that there's no reason to go on? And I'm really grieved and burdened about that. Because either God is who he says he is, came to give us hope, or he's not.
That's the ultimate question right there, really. I'm just going to kind of jump around. Let me jump over to Steve here for a moment. Steve, your thoughts?
I was looking at these statistics on some of these that you have and on the age range, and the elderly age range is really surprising, which was a surprise to me. And then of course I see the 25 to 34 age range, which is a concerning age range for me, considering that age range is an age for a lot of people who have children at that age, 25 to 34.
True.
And then you think about what is the problem in that age range. How many of these do have children? And when they do have these problems and go that far in life, the problems that it will create with their children, the after effects, not
huge.
just with that person, but the lingering effects that go on with their children.
So let me speak to that real quick. This is just from the control room, also producing over here. Parental death by linked to a increased risk
Self-destruction.
of self-destruction. Excuse me. Offspring exposed to parents' self-destructive behavior that ended their lives were 3 times more likely to die by that same behavior. In a study, it was 2.97% with a 95% CI. So what that means is that our kids are looking at what we are doing, and they're actually mimicking it. And they're in that age when you have young children who see their parent commit the ultimate act of self-destruction. Sorry, I was reading it off here. I told everyone don't use that word. It's hard when you're reading it. When you see your family member or your parent do that, whatever that is, it is a habit that is formed, is built into the child. And you have 9-year-olds, 8-year-olds who see this, and they're in that 24 to 35 category, and they have that kid who's preteen, tween years. I'm sure, I haven't had a chance to read the stat. I'm sure that affects them.
That's, it's interesting because as parents, as a parent of 5, it's very easy to tell your kids, do as I say, not as I do. And yet we see, even with something like this, we see they're not going to heed that kind of language. It is almost like it's ingrained that we're going to do what mom and dad do.
Well, even to kind of piggyback off what John Arthur was saying, was that a few weeks ago I attended a homeschool convention, and one of the guest speakers was a guy from, I want to call it Trail Life, or it was something like that, but it was like the Christian equivalent of Boy Scouts. And he was going through some statistics, and he was saying that at that range of that preteen, late childhood era, that there's a lot of kids that are doing that monkey see, monkey do kind of mentality. And it kind of really just hurts my heart, because you see these kids, you're like, that could have been my future president. That could have been somebody that is actually going to make that difference in the world that we need. And just hearing all the statistics that he was going off with, it was just absolutely devastating.
I think that's going to go real nice later when we talk to John Arthur about the value of a person's life. We'll talk about that more, and I think that's a great point to bring up.
I have a point I want to bring about the age range.
Let me get to Melissa real quick,
Okay.
and let me come back to that.
Okay.
So Melissa, you're going to talk in a few moments about all the different reasons that a person may engage in self-destructive behavior. But what stands out to you on this issue of self-destructive behavior?
I guess for me, it's what stands out is that that person doesn't believe that there's a purpose.
Hopeless,
Yeah.
not hope.
Well, it depends on the person.
It does. And Nikki and I were talking about that very thing this morning. She was looking at her childhood, which was, it wasn't terrible, but I mean, it wasn't easy.
I
And
wasn't
she
raised in
made
a Christian home.
right. She made choices, and she was making the point of, siblings, cousins, all of that, being part of that same environment, having the opportunity to make different choices. She made hers, made good. Others made choices not so good. And here we are. There's some choices to be made. And I think the one point that Melissa made regarding the speaker there at that convention, when you talk about young people, you're talking about very formidable years. And when I say formidable, they are challenging, yet the ability to form, the ability to set the direction. And I think as a local New Testament church, we have to really understand the importance of setting a proper direction
Yes.
for our young people. And if we do not, then we deal with topics like what we're dealing with today.
Yes.
Now I
So-
want to go back to you, Nikki.
Well, we're talking about the 25 to 34 age there that has a high rate of self-destructive decisions. And this is where the church needs to really wake up. And I'm not talking about just the pastors. I'm talking about the moms and the dads in the church. Your children are going to a public school. They're being exposed to things that children should never be exposed to. Children should be allowed to be children and be innocent.
And moms and dads have no clue.
So they're being introduced to things that's very confusing to them. They're living in a confused world. And I believe that they're making decisions at 12 to 18 they're not really ready to make. And then they have to live with the memory. And you all know, if you've done something bad and you go to bed at night, it just keeps you up. You feel bad about it. So we have children who are not being protected and allowed just to have an innocent childhood. They're being exposed. And then they're encouraged to make decisions
Yep.
that are going to change their life. And then at 25 and 34, they've got to live with those decisions.
And you're seeing a large, we're seeing 40% of a certain group who make life-altering body modifications to look from one gender to the next. We're seeing them get into that 24
Yes.
to 35 and the 36 to 45 demographic. And they still have a 40% chance of committing the ultimate act of self-destruction.
Yeah,
So
the rate doesn't help.
it doesn't change. In
Doesn't
fact, after
It goes
10
up.
years, the first 5 years, you have so much societal encouragement
Yes.
that you're on a high. But after 10 years, that's where it sets in. It's like abortion too. Abortion is the same way. You look at the first 5 years, there's very little regret, comparatively speaking, across the board. There are some that do, but it's low overall. But after 10 years, when it hits, that 12-year-old could have been mine.
But that thrill
That's when it
of
hits.
I just did something to modify myself, that wears off after a period of time, and you don't get that attention that you were
Right.
seeking. And so you're
And-
left
and
with the regret.
You
Didn't
just
fix.
touched on something there.
You didn't fix the internal problem.
Yep.
That
Right.
goes to what we're speaking to
Yep.
today. You've got to fix the internal issue.
So let's take a look at this from a biblical perspective, because that's ultimately where we need to be getting our answers. And the question becomes, Nikki, do we have examples of in the Bible?
Yes, we do. We actually have
Destructive behavior.
we have 7 people in the Bible that
Yes.
made decisions to end their life, and that would be Abimelech, and that's in Judges 9:52 through 54. He was an advisor, and I believe, if I have this correctly, he was an advisor to David. And then when Absalom rose up against David, he went with Absalom.
Yes, he did.
He did. And then he gave advice to Absalom, and Absalom didn't follow it. Well, what did this man just do? He just betrayed his King David.
His employer.
Went over to Absalom. Absalom did not respect his advice, so that left him with nothing. Now, what he should have done is just repented before the Lord and accepted the consequences. But
How about another one?
then we have Samson. Now, Samson was raised up as, a man of God, but he liked to play around the fringes of life he shouldn't have, and he got caught up. And so Samson ends up becoming a prisoner, and he loses his strength. And they start mocking him, the Philistines. And his last prayer was, when they tied him to the Colosseum, to the support beam,
To the columns, yeah.
that he said, Lord, give me strength one more time. And in his death, he defeated more of the enemy than he did in his life.
I want to whoa up right here.
I feel like that's less of a self-destruction and more of a he was a judge, he was a military leader.
But he knew
It was a heroic act.
Yeah, but let me tell you why I like including this one in here. Because what was Samson doing at that time? What was happening with Samson? Where was his strength?
It had been gone, taken from him.
From the cutting of
His hair.
his hair. What was growing back when this ultimately happened?
His hair.
And the thing is, guys, if he had waited a little bit longer, you have to wonder what more he might have done.
Well, you have to wonder.
Here's the key. For those of you that are engaged or thinking about it, you need to understand that your victory might be right around the corner.
Guys,
Good point. Go ahead.
guys grow long hair.
That's the moral of the story. You got to ask Steve. Steve knows.
But
I am weak.
But this is a really good point
For those
because
on audio,
Still
Charlie is
have not
bald.
gotten my strength.
For those of you who are on audio, by the way, thank you for over 200,000 downloads. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Ring that bell if you're on YouTube. Steve is rocking some long locks, and Charlie is not. You can't.
Steve will share.
So another point I wanted to bring out about Samson. These are
We can
really
make a nice toupee.
you can really examine all of these people in different lights. For example, Abimelech made a bad choice. He made a bad choice.
Yes.
Samson, like we said, danced around the edges of things he shouldn't have been dancing around. And you look at your life. Maybe you will be happier if you change who you hang out with. Maybe you'll be happier if you change what you're doing.
I can tell you that.
There are things that you can do. Now,
May I build off that for a second?
yeah.
Because the number one cause, in my opinion, of my own suffering and my own issue is a lack of purpose. When I don't fill my life full of purpose, that's when I'm most vulnerable to this.
Yep.
So you were built for a purpose, and not to get to the end, but you were built for a purpose. If you do not understand that, you can lose the narrative, and the narrative doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
why continue?
And I think one thing we really need to make sure that we understand here is that depression and the hopelessness can be caused by circumstances, and sometimes it can be caused by a chemical imbalance in your body. Nobody here is a professional, so you need to know to get professional help. Is it just something that you need some antidepressants to get you out of? Do you need counseling? Has something tragic happened in your life and you need someone to help walk you through your suffering? Or do you just need a new set of friends, a new environment? Maybe you need to rededicate your life to Christ. Maybe you need stronger people who are walking in victory and hang out with them. These are things everybody has to ponder.
Melissa, we want to talk a little bit about the reasons. When we look at the different examples in God's word, when you look at Abimelech, when you look at Samson, Saul just wanted to avoid some difficult days because the chances of the Philistines gouging his eyes out were pretty high.
Yeah,
that's what they were going to do. And there was torture to be inflicted, obviously. Ahithophel, Zimri, Judas.
Iscariot.
Here's another example. Let me just build off that one, and I'll come to you, Melissa, to talk about the reasons. But with Judas, what was Jesus willing to do with Peter? I forgive you. I forgive you. And you have to wonder if Judas might have been forgiven the same way. Didn't get a chance to find out because he dealt with it the way that he felt he needed to deal with it. So Melissa, I want to go to some of the reasons why people engage in the self-destructive behavior. Let's cover some of those.
Sure. So some of the list for the root causes for this, includes like mental illness, traumatic experience, bullying, drug addiction, eating disorders, unemployment, social isolation, relationship issues, terminal illness, financial issues, what we already talked about with lack of purpose, and some of it is just genetics. And I like to look at the last 5 years, because we saw in 2020 that there was an increase in people doing self-harm. And even our friends at the NIH even said that this behavior 10 months into the pandemic, there was a number of 5,568 youth who committed this act. And even if you're an introvert, and I'm not an extrovert by any example, but even as an introvert, you need to have that social contact. And even they said in the article that the social contact is needed as much as food and water. And that just really hit me, that we need to have people. So when we look at what happened back in 2020 and leading up to today, we saw that between the lockdowns, many faced unemployment during this time, which led to depression, and you lose that sense of purpose. So everything kind of just snowballs into each other. And then we see for the traumatic experiences, we have law enforcement, we have our EMS, our fire. And you look at these people and you're they see the worst of the worst. And even though as a former first responder, they told us in our training, they're you need to be jaded. You need to almost, I don't say act like it's humorous, but you have to remove yourself from that situation. But at the same time, you're still a person, and you're still going to internalize what you see, what you experience. And that's, for many people, that comes to haunt them later in life. And then you look at social media, and we see all these people, especially the youth, and a lot of, I've seen reports for the young boys, that you get caught up in this, you send a questionable photo, and that's and you get that blackmail of, well, I'm going to publish this online if you don't do XYZ or pay me or whatever. And it honestly leads these young youth to believe that this is my only way out of this situation is by committing this act.
Lack of wisdom there, and a lack of hope. And I think one of the things that really stood out to me as I researched this particular topic, it was the issue of the depression. Depression is ultimately the last stop?
Yeah.
And it goes to the heart of a lack of understanding the purpose of your life. It goes to a lack of understanding
that your life has purpose.
That your life has purpose.
That's it.
When you think about first responders, and I think more about police officers probably than any other group in this issue. There's lots of different first responders, so please don't misunderstand me. When you look at some of the issues that they deal with day to day, I'm having a hard time understanding how they walk home sane, because they're dealing with family disturbance calls. They're dealing with homicides. They're dealing with all sorts of different things of people being angry one toward another. Can I just stop here for a moment? And for all of you that are listening and you engage on social media, I want to encourage you to try to do something with your social media. Try to be a little more positive in it. Okay? Don't engage so much in the vitriol and in the things of that sort. I am all about being aware. I'm all about that. But we don't need to engage every single article and address it. That's not your business. That's not your purpose. You can be positive about things that are going on around you. How about praising the work of somebody that did something without expecting anything in return? I'll give you an example. Check this out on YouTube if you really want to see this. Just Google lawn mowing guys doing it for free.
Yes.
It's fun stuff to watch.
I watched one yesterday, It is, and I don't do this very often with this particular specific topic, but I looked at one yesterday. He has 1.99 million subscribers. Now, for those of you that are Christians, we believe in tithing. Yeah? Yes. That's, my gut tells me that's his form of tithing, if you will, for his work. And I'll tell you what, something tells me he's doing just fine financially. And he walks in peace every day.
Mm-hmm.
So back to the social media, all I'm asking you to do is really just kind of check yourself and make sure that we don't go hateful vitriol all the time.
And remember, it's not that important. I'm sorry, your social media presence is not that important.
Amen.
Your presence, if someone takes an image of you and you did a dirty, you snap pictures that you shouldn't have, and you're ready to 13 reasons why yourself. The advice from police, EMS, everyone who's dealt with these situations, they say, here's what you're going to do. Post on social media, get ahead of it, say, I did something stupid. You might see something, I'm being blackmailed. You might see something. And guess what? You're going to get over it. You're going to get through it. You are not that important. Your story, not to throw it on too hard, your story is not that important to other people. Your impact, the impact of you having a pic of your private parts online is going to be a blip on the radar of everyone but your parents. Okay, your parents and your significant others. And if you preempt it, that's the best way to handle it. And there's hope. You're going to have a life afterward. Yep. If you choose life.
You know, John Arthur, it's interesting about that because, you know, nobody is really that important. Because if you pay attention to anything in the news, how quick does anything go by the wayside?
It's in and through. So
it just goes by and then it's forgotten on.
You're of infinite importance to God. You are of infinite importance to God. You're of infinite importance to your family, if it's a good family. But when it comes to mistakes like that, when it comes to your social media, maybe you need to drop some of the self-importance. And that's something that I had to learn a long time ago. I know Melissa wanted to say something.
Well, kind of to your point, and also from like that back end, you know, and what Nikki also said was like, where's the church in all of this? Because even, you know, if you're living in Texas, lucky us, because we have the Texas Senate Bill 763 that does allow chaplains to come into the public school systems. We have, and even if you're not a chaplain, if you're a Christian, or they do allow like Jews, but a Judeo-Christian belief, there is, with the local police departments, they have a chaplain program where you're riding along with an officer. And when those situations come up where it's not a criminal matter, it might be a mental health matter, they have somebody that is a church going believer in that car with them to help address those issues. But I think we get so sucked into our four walls of the church, and it's safe, it's comfortable, and we don't want to get our hands dirty.
And that is the statement.
Yeah.
Ministry work is dirty work.
I mean, you did prison ministries.
Yeah, and it's not easy. It really isn't. And that, I think that point is really well made.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think one of the best things that could have been done in the state of Texas, especially in the county where we're at, is the sheriff ride-alongs. Mm-hmm. I think it's tremendous, and I would love to see it nationwide. Of course, there's some groups out there that would like to totally do away with police, which brings on another topic, cultural opposition. And I think after the riots a few years ago, I'm not sure how police officers were able to even get up and go to work. I mean, when you think about people just wanting to do you in.
But, you know, we do live in Texas, and so there was a lot of support. I remember the one day that we went to Walmart, and there was a police officer there, and everybody was just going up and shaking his hand. Remember?
Yeah.
and because they were just saying all the riots were going on, and it was, bad police, and this gentleman was just standing there, and everybody was just going up and shaking his hand and telling him thank you, and so.
But
Thank
Melissa,
God I live in Texas.
to Melissa's point about the church not wanting to get its hands dirty, I think another issue that we see culturally speaking within the church is that we have a difficulty dealing with the topic because we don't understand it.
That's true.
We don't understand what really causes depression. We don't. And so, can I just say, Nikki's point about us? None of us here are professionals, okay? But there are some things biblically that we know can help, and a good thought life would be a good start.
Well, I think the question we really do need to address is a Christian condemned to hell?
Well, hold that thought, because I am coming to that. I absolutely am, because it is a critical question.
And there is this lack of empathy in the church
Yes.
concerning those who are depressed.
Yep.
And what I think we really need to be as a church is we need to understand that, look, there are people who are genetically strong. There are people who are genetically weak.
Yes.
There are people who are genetically tall.
Well, the
There are
Bible
genetically
does.
who are short. And there
Yeah.
are people who have different... The word neurodivergent has been thrown around so much, and some of it is utter horse tripe. But there are people who have a harder hill to climb than the rest of us. And so some of us come off and we say stuff like, hey, it's just Jesus, man. Just Jesus. Look, that's true. That is correct. Just Jesus. But you've got to remember, these people have a harder row to hoe. They have more work to do than you. If someone is suffering from a genetic, chemical makeup, compositional issue, there's no shame in taking drugs to fix that problem. There's no shame in seeking therapy and counseling. I think a lot of counselings of the world, I think counseling should be rooted in the scripture. I think you can get a lot more out of that.
Yep.
And I think the counseling of the world tends to be atheistic or humanistic is the word. And it's very flawed. So I think that can actually lead you down the wrong path. But there are people who have a harder time. And we've got to remember that. We've
I
got to
think there's-
remember
No,
that.
Let me address that biblically.
Yeah.
Because the Bible talks about, I want to say weak-minded, and I don't mean this in a negative manner, but some people can handle things better than other people because of their mindset. Okay, and it may be the way that they're created. But the Bible does address that. Also, the Bible says there's wisdom in a multitude of counselors.
Yes.
Now, that's a multitude of people. God has set you up. You need people, and we in the church have not dealt with this because it is uncomfortable. I will just tell you, I have not experienced a lot of depression. Now, I'm not saying I have never been depressed. I'm just saying I haven't experienced a lot of it. And I really have a harder time being around people who are, Eeyores. Woe is me. Oh, good morning. I struggle with that. So that's my issue. But the Bible does address this if we really look to it and understand.
So, I mean, and I can speak to that partially from experience. As a kid, I had some brain damage from a very, very critical illness, hospitalized twice in South America and then here in the States getting in. They almost lost me twice. I had migraines and allergies after that, and I had chemical issues. I had hormonal issues. I had to go on hormone replacement therapy because the dehydration and the illness messed with my brain. And it really took a long time to reset.
Now we know.
Now we know.
Now we
Now we
know.
understand.
Now we know.
I don't understand what XYZ individual's issue is, but I have my own walk with that.
Understanding.
I've been on the brink of it. My mom saw the mark from the weapon at the back of my head and asked me, "What is this?" And I told her, and I said the thing that stopped me was, what am I going to say to God in the next 5 seconds? when I arrive at heaven's gates and he says, I gave you a life, I gave you a purpose, and I ransomed you from your sin. What about that was too hard for you? I said that I would walk with you. I said that I would work with you. That's what got me. So I've been there. I've done that.
Yep.
And a lot of us in here have been there and done that. The question is not do you love Jesus enough, but are you surrounding yourself with the right people who are talking to you? There are so many stories about people who say that it was the day. This was the day that I was going to, and then someone picked up my books off the floor. Someone opened the door for me and invited me out to coffee. Someone invited me to whatever. And there are so many stories. One of the most famous one was a valedictorian. I don't know if you've heard the story. There's a young man. He was depressed. He was the loser at school, and he was cleaning out his locker so his mom wouldn't have to. He had cleaned his room. He had planned the act that night, and some individual befriended him that day. He dropped his books because he was carrying all these books. They walked him home with him. They said, "Hey, do you want to hang out? I've seen you around. This is at school." And they met at school, rather. This is at his house. It says, after he carried his books home, "Do you want to hang out? Do you want to do whatever?" He thought, okay, one more day, I'll try. This kid then became the valedictorian. He's now not famous, but he's a successful individual. And in his valedictorian speech is where he told everyone, he said, that was the day that I was going to end it all. But because someone showed that act of kindness, they befriended me, they reached out. You never know what impact you're going to have in someone's life. And if you're in that situation, look for that friend.
That's good. I want to cover just two things quickly on the cultural side, especially from the church perspective. I think one of the things that we don't understand is the issue of serotonin. And serotonin is a very complex chemical within our body. Too much of it, not good. Not enough of it, not good. It is one of those chemicals that absolutely unequivocally needs to be balanced appropriately within our body. And if it's not, it leads to the issue of depression, which ultimately leads to issues of acts of self-destruction. That's number one. Number two, I think that the other thing that the church needs to do a better job with is the stigma associated with the issues of mental health and with acts of self-destruction. And that's why I really appreciated the pastor in Oklahoma addressing this issue. He shared in his message that he did not want to, but he ultimately, I'm not going to say was forced to, but it was the next step before being forced to, because someone in their church had done it. And his wife came to him and said, you need to teach on this topic. So I think it's something that pastors out there, you need to engage in this. Moms and dads, you need to engage with this. You don't need to be afraid about talking about this. Mm-hmm. You really don't. It's a part of life. It's things that are thought about. If your child was thinking about stealing, how would you deal with that? Hello. So it's another topic on the table, and we need to quit avoiding it. Steve, we need to talk a little bit about what are some of the things that our government has done to help in this.
Well, they've one thing that I've noticed here recently is that, like Melissa had talked about, having people ride along with police officers, and that is more of a local thing that's been being done.
Yeah,
and having mental health professionals, especially in some of the larger cities, ride with police officers to deal with people that have mental health issues, instead of having police officers just say draw down on them and talk to them and talk them down so that way they don't have this conflict of arms with them, and talk them down and get them the mental health help that they need, and get them into some kind of therapy or into a hospital or wherever their needs can be met, which, I still think that, they need to be covered by a armed police officer in case it does have a tendency to escalate, because sometimes it does, not all the time, but sometimes, it does escalate because their intent is to harm others, and it would be a shame to have other people get harmed just because of the mental health issue that's going on.
And then just within the last few years, we've had the addition of the hotline.
Yes,
which
the
is
988
988.
hotline, which is an excellent hotline, because you can call us just like calling 911, and you can get mental health help just as quick, especially in a lot of the larger metroplexes that are out. It's a little bit more difficult in some of the more rural areas.
Yep.
But isn't it funny? Isn't it funny that the 988 hotline is really no different than talking to someone who's well versed in the word, interested in you,
And I was just fixing to go there.
and
Yeah.
someone who actually cares about you. Oh wait, that's what the church is supposed to be.
And I think
Right.
that if sometimes we make too much of certain jobs, careers, if you will. We talk about, well, don't you want to grow up and be this? Don't you want to grow up and be that? And so on and so forth. When's the last time you talked to somebody and said, you know what? I think you would make a great counselor one day. We don't see that as really something pedestal like. And yet, who are some of the most valuable people that we have? It's those Christian counselors who can really help you make some sense out of things that are difficult.
Well,
I think our pastors can.
I was going to say, let me make an unpopular opinion statement here. This is why churches should be small. You should have pastors that know their 100, 200, 300 congregants by name.
Yep.
And when someone's having an issue, that is the purpose of the spiritual shepherd. They're supposed to be doing that,
That work.
not raking in
Yeah.
G7 and Rolls-Royce money
Yeah.
off of 30,000 viewers. There's nothing wrong with buying a G7, G6 or a Rolls-Royce or whatever. There's nothing wrong with that. But when it's done with the widow's mites and whatever, and you're not actually providing spiritual nourishment,
That's a little problem.
that's literally theft from God, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So, but
But the point
I
being,
digress.
we should be encouraging people to think about things like this because it truly is valuable to others. John Arthur, I want to go to you. We want to talk a little bit about the economics of this, and you wouldn't think that self-destructive behavior would affect economics, but let's give this a whirl.
Absolutely. So real quick, on the economics, there's two fronts, right? So there's obviously there's an incentive for the government to provide the 988 hotline, right? If someone is causing self-harm, then yes, that is actually a problem for the community. That's a problem for the structure in the organization. But one of the things that I think we kind of forget is the generational poverty that parents doing this to. You have a 3x more likelihood of committing the ultimate act of self-destruction if your parents did, but you also have the robbing of the two-parent household if one of the parents commits this. And that is one of the single greatest generators of generational poverty, is having one parent missing for whatever the reason. And so one of the things that I do think that ending your own life is the ultimate act of selfishness. And well, just wait a minute, before you get angry. I do want to say, I think we've glorified it a little bit.
Yes.
I think we've said, oh, it's this and that. It's like, no. You need to know this. Ending your own life is selfish.
Yes.
It is selfish. You are robbing from your family. You are robbing from yourself and the good that you should be doing. Find that purpose. And you're also robbing from God. And whether or not you believe in God, I'll leave the other two as strong enough arguments. And the third one is that you have infinite value.
Yes.
You have infinite, immeasurable value.
Yes.
And destroying that value, and we're going to talk about rights in the next episode. Where do rights come from? What's the purpose of this? And so, spoiler alert, right? If your value comes from you being an image bearer of God, and you have a purpose and a telos, you have a reason for being here on this earth, the destruction of your own life is one of the greatest defacements. It is. It is like tomato soup on the Mona Lisa, right? It is one of the greatest defacements of value that you could ever imagine. And you're worth much more than some painting made by a guy 500, 600 years ago.
And we just lost all our artists.
Right. No, but
I'm sorry.
in all seriousness, you're the destruction of that, the amount of value, the amount of, you could have been the one to change someone's life. Maybe you're not the next president. There was a funny skit of this guy is visited by someone from the future, and they go, okay, so at 10:30, you're going to interact with so-and-so, and they're going to cure cancer or be the next president, whatever, and your interaction is going to change their life. And the guy goes, what, is that it? Is that all the future has for me? Like, that's my purpose on life? It's like, well, God doesn't deal like that. And the skit was funny. It went on to do some other stuff. It was funny, but you have a purpose, and the interactions you have with other people and the value you inculcate into their lives. I've had people say stuff like, you and your family are the reason why I'm alive today. And it's like, that shouldn't be. Like, we didn't do anything heroic or special. We were just your friend. And it's like, but that was what the person needed.
Yep.
That's what they needed. You were the one who picked up their books when they dropped them on their way home to end their own life, right?
Yep.
That's what you need to be.
Nikki, we're coming back to that key question that you brought out. So if a Christian commits the ultimate sacrifice there, if you will,
Self-destruction.
self-destruction, what is the answer? Did they go to hell?
Well, that used to be the old religious take on it. And again, the pastor that you I'm sorry, I keep bumping my thing. I know it makes noise. I don't mean to. Pastor Nolan there. If you listen to him, he'll tell you where this was birthed out, about you would go straight to hell. And I've heard that many times. But that is not biblically sound. And David committed murder. Moses committed murder. There's still men that went to heaven. So self-murder is not going to prevent you from going to heaven.
I think Pastor Allen really, of all the points that he made in the two messages, this probably was one of the strongest points that he made. And if you look at this from a biblical perspective,
Yes.
there is absolutely no biblical stand on the issue of a Christian going to hell. It just does not stand.
It
And
comes
that-
out of the Catholic Church and the catechisms
Yes.
that they wrote. And we were talking about this earlier. We were talking about a Facebook post that you saw with in regards to homosexuality.
Yeah.
And someone we said, look, you're kind of putting on the Bible extra emphasis in something, and we do that with the ending of your own life. We do that with sexual deviancy, and it's like God didn't put that order of importance on it. Why are you doing that? You're making a man-made religious construct that's not in the Bible.
Yeah.
Yep. And I would encourage you, if you have a moment, to take a look at Pastor Allen's 2 messages there. Again, he's from Oklahoma.
Can you
dealing-
put that in the description, please, sir?
Yeah, we actually can. I
Send
need to
that to
dig
me.
those out. Those were really good. I would encourage you to give them a listen and really evaluate some of the things that he's been said. We're going to do our ending a slight bit differently today. It's a tough topic, and maybe you're listening today and you've got loved ones and you're trying to figure out how to help them, so on and so forth. And I think ultimately today what we wanted to do is we wanted to give you a little bit of an understanding of the topic, but also show that the church can do more. But ultimately today, what we want to do is take a few minutes and pray for your loved ones, maybe for you. Maybe you're the one that's seeking some help today. So I want to
Thank you there.
I want to take a few minutes here, and we're gonna pray, and we're gonna ask the Lord to walk with you through some things. And just real quick before we do start to pray, I want you to understand that one thing that I believe is that we should not ask God to deliver us out of our circumstances. We should ask God to walk with us through them. And you may not understand that. You may not agree with that. I will tell you that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego walked into the fiery furnace, and God did not deliver them out. He walked with them through it. God did not deliver Job out of his circumstances. He walked with him through it. God did not deliver Paul out of his circumstances. He walked with him through it. I could go on. And I want you to understand that there is a God that is willing to walk with you through your situation. Don't ask him to deliver you out of it. Ask him to teach you what he wants you to understand while going through it, and to use it for his honor and his glory. Let's go ahead and pray. Lord, thank you ultimately for your goodness, your gracious, your mercy. We know, Lord, in your word that it says that we are fearfully and wonderfully made. And indeed we are. We are incredibly complex and yet beautiful because of the way that you've created us. Lord, there are some today that are seeking to help loved ones, that are thinking about acts of self-destruction. Lord, I pray that, number one, that you would give them hope, the ultimate thing that they need. I pray that you would help them to see the value of their life, the value that they have to others around them. I pray, Lord, that you would speak into their heart. Lord, it says in your word in Genesis, and God breathed into man's nostrils, and man became a living soul. Today, Lord, would you breathe into those that have no hope? Would you breathe hope into them? And Lord, I pray that through this, they would see ultimately what you're trying to teach them, how much you really love them, and Lord, that they would ultimately use it for your honor and your glory. And we ask this in the name of Jesus. Amen. And amen.
Amen.
God bless you today. I really do appreciate you giving us some of your time to listen to some of these things. And if you like this podcast, like, comment, share, all that good stuff. Subscribe. We would love your subscription. We are moving up on the subscriptions.
Yep, slowly but surely.
Go Rumble. Go over to Rumble. It's a good place to catch this.
Rumbling on
Absolutely is. We are getting some comments from people that really don't like some of what we're saying.
That's okay.
That's
Where?
all right. And by the
Not
way,
on Rumble?
yeah, no, well,
No, mostly.
mostly on
YouTube.
Yep,
Yeah, well, that's
yep.
no surprise.
Yeah, it really isn't. But I do want to say that even if you dislike us, you don't like what we're doing, we're okay with that. We love you, and we will respond.
We still read your comment.
We still read your comments, and we appreciate that. So if you really don't like this, well, you know what to do in the twos. Do it twice. So, yeah. Thank you very much for joining us. Lord bless y'all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Amen.
Okay. One final thing here. Our
That was exciting.
yeah. Did you like that?
Okay.
Did you like that?
What was your last?
So I am gonna add in. I messed up the thing there, but
yeah, you did.
I want you to give me the one thing that you believe has provided the most hope for you in your life.
The one thing.
The one thing.
I can say that easily. When I realized that God had a purpose for my life, I also realized He had a plan and a path for me to follow. So when things are horrible, that's what I focus on.
Great, Miss Melissa.
There's things like that's happened, in the last probably 20 to 15 years of my life. And whenever I moved back to Houston, finding this church has been the most impactful thing in my life. And knowing that when I have my struggles, John Arthur knows very well. I'll message him at probably like
2 in the morning.
2 in the morning sometimes. And just be like, hey, what do you think? And just having that support, having that friendship, having that fellowship has just been amazing.
And it's been great having you here too. Let me just say that. Mr. Steve.
Yes. It was, it's been difficult over the past 23, 24 years. After I was diagnosed with epilepsy and all of that, and having all of these problems that I've had over the years, and trying to figure out what I'm going to do and what God had for me, because at the beginning I wasn't a Christian at first when I was first diagnosed. And then when I was saved, I still had some wonderings of what to do. And then as time went on, God was speaking to me quite loudly on the purpose I was given here at the church and the things that I needed to do, especially with my past experiences. And it's been a big uplifting thing for me, and keeps me busy in what I do, and it has
And might I
changed
say
a lot
that
of things in my
I think you've handled it well.
life. Thank you very much.
And I say that sincerely. I think there's a lot of people that would not do near as well handling the challenge that you've been given pertaining to epilepsy and what's the path forward. I think you've done it well. Mr. John Arthur.
So can you ask the question one more time?
Yeah, so the one thing that really is
Good answers.
helped
I was
you
listening.
to pivot to your ultimate hope and where it's placed you. Because I think,
The most helpful thing, see, that's where I'm. So, like the most helpful individual or the most helpful
could be.
idea?
Sure.
Well, I'd say this: skepticism actually
Wow.
has been the most helpful thing for my hope. And what I mean by that is and you've heard the story before, I had a rabid, angry atheist tell me, look, you're only a Christian because your parents were, and you're a product of your environment. And I said, you know what, at 12 years old, I was like, you know what, that's actually a really fair argument. If I can take Jesus off the cross, or if I can leave him in the tomb, he's not worth believing in. And that was one of the best things that could have ever happened to me, because after that I started studying, and I really started focusing, and I really started learning and looking, and I found some really good teachers along the way, including you, Mr. Charlie. So thank you. But skepticism has actually been really helpful, because now I have firm foundation in that hope. That's why.
That's excellent. That's excellent. Man, I appreciate you guys sharing those things. Thank you very much.
Charlie, what is your most helpful?
Oh,
Yeah.
You
so
can't get away with that.
no,
can't.
I think for me, there's probably been a couple things in my life. One that really stands out to me was a lady back in the small town that we used to live in, and we're talking only 1,500, 2,000 people living there, not even. And she had spoken to me about, do you think, have you ever considered what God might do with you in the future? And she was kind of going toward the area, I think, of pastoring, which I had not thought about that at all. And she was a praying person, much like Nikki. I mean, very methodical every day. And that stood out to me as number one. And I think the other one is there was a lot of younger people that kind of looked up to me. And I felt that don't let them down. I think one of the greatest things that you can do as a Christian is start teaching. And a lot of people go, I don't have the knowledge. Precisely.
It'll come.
You'll get it.
You'll get it. You'll get it because you don't want to look like a fool
You'll study.
when you're done, and you will study. And so I think those two things are probably the keys, for me, where God has put me. But this has been a great podcast. Really appreciate you guys doing it. Tell us in the comments below something that really has stuck out to you in your life, given you hope, and something that might encourage somebody else. In the meantime, get ready for that next podcast. We're going to be doing a great one on individual rights. We look forward to seeing you.
Where do they come from?
Bye-bye.
Where they go?
Bye. Well, they're certainly not from the government.
Right on.
Anybody thinks